to welcome back to Solomon Live our Deputy Grand Master, Sir David Wootton. What shall we be discussing this evening around the world of English Freemasonry? We'll be talking to Sir David about his experiences, about travelling the globe and getting to know our districts and supporting them extremely well. So in time-honoured fashion, just ensuring that you're in place, and we shall begin at 7:30. Ladies and gentlemen and brethren, good evening and welcome to Solomon Live. My name is Brody, the Provincial Communications Officer for Worcestershire, and of course the host of these monthly webinars. And what we're doing in time-honoured fashion, letting you get in, grab yourself a drink, make yourself comfortable and get ready for our conversation in just a couple of minutes' time. We'll be discussing around the world of English Freemasonry with our Deputy Grand Master, Sir David Wootton. His second visit. So clearly we potentially did something right last time. So we'll begin in a few minutes' time. Stand by. Ladies, gentlemen, and brethren, a very good evening to you. Welcome to Solomon Live. My name is Brody, the Provincial Communications Officer for Worcestershire, and I have the honour of hosting these monthly webinars of lively, engaging Freemasonry conversation. We'll begin in a couple of minutes' time. It's our last Solomon of the year. We'll be back in 2024. Sounds strange to say that. And we'll come back with a fantastic interview and session for you in the new year as well. More on that coming up in around 45 minutes' time. But this evening, it's around the world of English Freemasonry. We are honoured to be joined by our Deputy Grand Master. We'll begin in just a second. Ladies, gentlemen, and brethren, good evening, Merry Christmas, and welcome to Solomon Live. My name is Brody. I'm the Provincial Communications Officer for the distinguished province of Worcestershire, and also the host of this monthly webinar of lively, engaging Freemasonry conversation. And if you do have any questions for our distinguished guest this evening, you can submit them in the usual way via the question and answer facility on Zoom. So without any further ado, this evening's Solomon Live is around the world of English Freemasonry. And let's welcome our Deputy Grand Master, Sir David Wootton. Sir David, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, Brody. Good to be here.
Well, welcome back, because clearly we did something right last time, or potentially nothing wrong to have you back for the second time.
Exactly. Good to be here.
And I should also add, ladies and gentlemen and brethren, if you'd like to watch David's first interview with us, you can do that, getting yourself along to the Solomon website. More details on that coming up later, and track down, meet the Assistant Grandmaster, as David was back then. But of course, Deputy Grandmaster now. So David, how's it been for you so far? Just over a year, isn't it now?
Yes, just over a year. And as Deputy Grand Master, I'm one step up from being an assistant, but it's a different role.
So when it comes to being a different role, tell us about some of those responsibilities, because there'll be a lot of people watching right now who don't actually know what you do within the role, what goes on behind the scenes.
The team of rulers on the craft side and the royal art side do things like installing provincial grandmasters and district grandmasters, which you might come on to. So there's a pool of collective activities that we all do. But the Deputy Grandmaster has two specific areas. One is the link between Grand Lodge and the charity side, the Masonic Charitable Foundation, the MCF. That's one area. The second area is helping out provinces and districts where there are problems, where a bit of guidance from Grand Lodge is appropriate, and doing it in a supportive way so we get the right answer. So those are the two specific areas that I deal with as deputy.
Absolutely. And have you had any surprises along the way? Any surprises that you weren't really expecting?
There always are surprises in masonry. Most of them good surprises, but one or two less good things in unexpected areas. But we can address all those.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're talking tonight about the world of English Freemasonry, looking at the districts and finding out how we support them as well. So let's talk about that, focusing on the districts. What have you discovered, for example, in your role as deputy, and of course what you were doing previously as well?
Well, there are 48 provinces in England and Wales in English Freemasonry. There are 32 districts around the world. There are 4 what we call groups, which are small, where there are just 4 lodges or fewer. And there are a total of 8 lodges which are on their own. They're called lodges not under districts or grand inspectors. Groups have grand inspectors. Districts have district grand masters. And I've discovered that it's the same masonry. Sounds silly to say it, but English Freemasonry is the same wherever it is practiced around the world. The same ritual, the same values, the same principles. Most districts cover much bigger geographic areas. And one thing I've discovered is the amount of travelling which our brethren in districts obviously outside England and Wales will, and the Channel Islands and Andaman will do to join in their masonry. I also get a strong appreciation of the value that our brethren in districts see in their masonry. The level of keenness and enthusiasm to be masons and work together with other masons is very strong. The third thing is that there's a lot we can learn from our Masonic brethren in districts and around the world. In England and Wales, there's only English masonry. We know that in Scotland, the Scottish masonry and Ireland, Irish masonry. In most districts around the world, there is English masonry, but there's also usually, not everywhere, but usually Scottish masons and Irish masons, and very often masons in the sovereign Grand Lodge of the country in question. So to an extent, English Freemasonry is in competition with those other Masonic orders, but also works with them and their different traditions. And we, part of our strategy, and it's part of my responsibilities to support the new strategy wherever I go. Part of that strategy is community engagement. And the districts do a lot of that, and they do it very well. And we in England can learn a lot from what they do in that area.
Right, so it's a mixed bag, isn't it? It's them learning from us, and of course passing that back to us as well. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen and brethren, I should add, a lot of the districts we're going to be talking about, you will find in this current edition of Freemasonry Today. So you can follow along and have a look at some of the places that we're talking about. Available on all good doormats right now. If you haven't already got it, I'm sure to imagine it'll be with you in just a day or two. So focusing on the districts, what have you really enjoyed about your travels around the world, would you say? Some of those things that you've really picked up on, maybe the history, for example.
English Masonry tended to follow, once it got going in the 18th century, the 1700s, it tended to follow where English people went for trading purposes, and there are some interesting historic linkages. Most of the districts that you can see on the map that you just pointed to, Brody, are in places where there's been historically a strong British influence. There are some places where English masonry is, well, there's a less obvious British connection. One is Valparaiso in Chile. And the only way that European settlers could get into Chile was by sea from the Pacific. And there is an English lodge in Valparaiso, Chile, Lodge of Harmony, number 1411. And I've been at a meeting and a festive ball in their magnificent Masonic hall, which also houses a French lodge, an Italian lodge, a German lodge, and a Swiss lodge, because there are strong communities from each of those communities. Though a big feature of our districts, and it comes home in Valparaiso, these lodges are district lodges and chapters. They're not expatriates. They're not. The members are not British people living in the place in question. They're local people. The members of Lodge of Harmony in Valparaiso, Chile, are Chileans. There may be one or two British, but they're genuine Chileans. And you find that whether it's Africa or Asia, the members of our lodges are people local to those areas.
And do you think that surprises a lot of people when they realise those lodges are made up mostly of locals rather than expats who have travelled the world?
Yes, yes. I'll give you another example from Greece. We have one lodge in Greece, Star of the East Lodge, number 880, on the island of Zakynthos, which was formed by British soldiers when the British control of the Ionian Islands, which is Corfu, etc., and Zakynthos on the west coast of Greece, that was coming to an end because those islands wanted, expressed in a referendum, to join the Kingdom of Greece. So and it now is part of Greece. But the British soldiers, they were about to depart, formed a lodge, a sort of British legacy. It is now the largest social group on the island of Zakynthos. How do I know I'm accepted on the island of Zakynthos? I'm a member of Star of the East Lodge, and it works in Greek. I visited there. I wasn't aware of a single member who was English. They're all Greek. So we have throughout our districts masonry, English masonry technically, but embedded in the community of the country or city in question.
Oh, that is so
which is great.
It is. It's so lovely to hear that. And why is it important that you and the other rulers and you generally as a whole support the districts? Because one of the things I do know before our conversation, they vary from small districts to larger districts to smaller districts that are spread over vast areas as well. Why is it important to show them that kind of Masonic respect, if you will?
It is, you're right about size. In Southern Africa, for instance, we have a district in Namibia, 4 lodges. We have a district of South Africa North, which is around Johannesburg, which has 100 lodges. And they're all different sizes of districts, whether it's lodges or chapters, in between. It's important because of the mutual learning point that I mentioned. It's the same masonry, but we practice it in our local communities, and we can learn from each other how to do that. It's a source of international cultural exchange because we are brethren, as I said before. It's English Masons. It's the same masonry, the same principles, the same values, the same ritual, with local variations. But we have local variations in England, too. It's also the case that Grand Lodge is generally regarded around the world as the premier Grand Lodge.
Yes.
If you're sovereign Grand Lodge in another country, what's the best way of being validated, if you like, of achieving. I'm going to use the word respectability, but validation is a much better word, and it's recognition by Grand Lodge in England, and that position of Grand Lodge internationally is hugely reinforced by our network of districts, the spread of masonry around the world, and the spread of English masonry is much wider than anybody else's. It sounds possessive. It is not intended to mean that.
No.
But English masonry is seen in a much wider spread of the world than most other. There are quite a lot of French lodges, for example, around the world. Lots of Scottish and Irish, but the English Masonic network is the biggest and the most wide spread, and that helps the position internationally of English masonry, but it also helps spread the word about masonry, whether you're English or any other type of masonry that we recognise.
It works at both those levels. Thank you, Sir David. Let's get to a couple of questions, actually. They're coming in thick and fast now. Keith Roberts has been in touch. Evening, Keith. Merry Christmas to you. He says, from a travelling perspective, which is the most challenging district to visit in the sense of getting there and the logistics behind it?
Getting there, well, England is very well served by Heathrow, and from Heathrow you can get direct to a lot of places. I installed Joel Mendes, new district grand master in March this year, in Trinidad. That was, in the sense of Keith's question, easy, because you go to Heathrow, you get off at Trinidad, easy. In the Far East, it is less easy. You can't get directly to Fiji, for example. You have to take a couple of flights. It's not difficult, but it takes a long time. And although the flights are very pleasant and you get a lot of sleep, it's a little bit of a challenge there. The ones that are most remote are the ones that are singletons on their own. I've yet to get to Jamestown Lodge, which is on the island of St. Helena in the southern Atlantic, which only recently had an airport on it. No daily flights from Heathrow there, I'm afraid. But I look forward to getting there.
Yes, maybe parachuting. Maybe that's the option to get there. What a great question. Thank you. And whilst we're on a roll, we've also had James. Is it James? Where's it gone? Oh, no, sorry, Robert. Forgive me, James. We'll hopefully get to you later on. And Robert says, and we've touched on this a little bit, is the ritual carried out in English or the local language generally around the districts? How does
generally in English.
Yeah.
Until recently, it was a firm rule that English lodges, wherever they were to carry out their ritual in English. Grand Lodge has been more flexible and allowed a number of lodges in Wales to work in Welsh, and that's a sensible adaptation to what is happening in Wales. We also know that there's a lodge, which is an English lodge in London, which works in German because it's a lodge for the German community in England. Star of the East Lodge on the island of Zakynthos. Remember, as I said, it's not an expat lodge. It's full of people who are genuinely Greek. That works in modern Greek, and I studied ancient Greek when I was at school and university, and did try a little bit of modern Greek in response to the salutation at the start of that meeting. The map will show that most of our lodges and districts are in places where there has been, not all, but where there has been British influence. So the vast majority work in English. though there will be some working in Spanish, for example, in South America.
Brilliant. Superb question, Robert. Thank you for sending it to us. So, David, thank you ever so much for answering that in a very splendid fashion. So let's talk about some of those places you visited then. I mean, we're not going to get them all mentioned in the next half an hour or so, but let's give it our best shot. And what I love about your trip to Argentina, this was a place that you'd visited before when you had the privilege of being Lord Mayor. Then you went back in a Masonic capacity, but you managed to combine another love of yours, which is rowing. Tell me about that.
Yes. On the Lord Mayor's visit, which was in 2012, the visit to Buenos Aires straddled a weekend. What are we going to do on the Sunday? So I said, let's find out about their rowing. Argentina's got a good rowing country. So there's a suburb of Buenos Aires called Tigre, which is where all the rowing was done. So I went there and went rowing from Tigre Boat Club. 2017, tercentenary visit, straddling the weekend. On the Sunday, what should we do? I thought, let's go back to Tigre. So we did. We visited the same boat club, which had a boat house with boats in it. And I was asked by our hosts at the Tigre Boat Club, well, we know why you were here 5 years previously. David, why are you here now? So we explained that it was a Masonic anniversary. And they said, oh, that's interesting. Come upstairs.
Wow.
Upstairs at the boathouse, you'd expect there to be a gym or a bar or a changing room or something, but no, there was a Masonic temple used by some of the lodges in Buenos Aires. Fairly small, but perfectly formed. Great.
That's brilliant. That is what a fantastic story. Thank you so much indeed for sharing that with us. And we'll get back to some of those countries you visited in just a moment. But let's dig down a little bit deeper, because one thing I know for sure is when you or other rulers visit these wonderful countries and the different districts we're blessed to have, it's not a jolly. There's a lot of work that goes on here, and you were telling me earlier that that your wife was asking if you'd managed to enjoy a beach on one of those trips, and the answer was no on every occasion. So, what is it that rulers do when you go and visit the different districts?
Yeah, the beach was a reference to a visit to Trinidad to install the new district Grand Master of Trinidad. And I'd speak to my wife, once or twice a day, and she said, have you been to the beach yet? No. Have you seen the beach yet? No. Do you know where the beach is? No. Are there any beaches? Probably. But there is these visitor working visits. It's true that the people we're visiting, our hosts, want to show you with pride, quite rightly, a little bit of their country. And we can do a little bit of that, but really there isn't time, and you actually want to take the opportunity to meet the brethren, yes, to do the meeting, yes, to do the ceremonial, whatever it is, installation or annual meeting, or indeed whatever it is. But you also want to combine that with discussion with the brethren about issues, challenges they're facing, what the Grand Lodge can bring to them by way of support, and what messages they want to send back to Grand Lodge, and what a visit from a London ruler can do to stimulate discussion within the districts of the region. When we went to Trinidad, all the district Grand Masters, the 6 or 7 districts in the Caribbean, all the district Grand Masters came to see the new district Grand Master installed. But the day before, we had a lengthy business meeting, is the only way to put it, with them all there, discussing the challenges and the opportunities and how they were dealing with things in their own districts. And there was a lot of sharing of best practice. We did the same in Singapore, where the districts in East Asia, South and East Asia, were getting together anyway, which is why I went, for what they call an Asia Oceanic conference, lasting a couple of days. And I spoke at that, and lots of very good talks about the strategy, about how lodges, chapters saw the way forward. But the visit of the ruler brings people together because they all want to come. Yes, there are some positive comments. Yes, there are some negative comments, but it's a great assistance to getting them all together and discussing the way forward, because everybody recognises it's one masonry. Well, it's the same order throughout the world.
And it's important you hear the reality of that, isn't it? And but I think one thing we've gained from that, David, is it's a privilege and an honour for you to be there, but it sounds pretty exhausting as well. So let's go back a few years now. It was a wonderful year to be a Freemason. We're talking about our tercentenary, and you were quite busy that year as well. And I recall one visit in particular that was incredibly busy for you during that year.
It was one which combined, if you include Europe as the starting point, 3 continents.
Wow.
Because I flew from London to Buenos Aires, and we had meetings there of the English Masons. Our district is known as South America South, and that now covers Argentina, Paraguay, and Chile. So we did a couple of days with English Masons and Argentinian Masons, Grand Lodge of Argentina, combined meetings. One English Lodge meeting within an Argentine Grand Lodge meeting. I then went to Valparaiso after a short via Santiago, the lunch at the Grand Lodge of Chile in Santiago, then an evening meeting in Lodge of Harmony, Valparaiso. Left the festive ball at 11 o'clock that night, car back to Santiago Airport, a few hours in a hotel, first flight to Buenos Aires, on the flight to London overnight, where I was met by my wife. And we had breakfast together in Garfunkel's Terminal 5.
Oh, you know it well.
And she brought one suitcase, and I handed her my South America suitcase, and I got on the plane to Chennai.
Wow.
In southern India, where we had another very enjoyable time with the Masons of the district we call the District of Madras, which is the old name for Chennai.
And how did you feel when you got back after that trip? It's I've just alluded to it. It sounds pretty exhausting, that.
No, it's very energizing.
Yes.
Because you see in wherever you go, whether it's Valparaiso or Buenos Aires, but very strongly in India, huge enthusiasm amongst Indians, not British people, Indians, for English Masonry, and Indians in Indian Grand Lodge of India Masonry, and that enthusiasm. In a way, if you're in England, which is the headquarters of English Masonry, you see the enthusiasm. You see Brethren keen in varying degrees on their masonry, but it's obvious why in England you would be an English Freemason.
Yes.
If you're in other countries, it's not obvious why you should be an English Mason. Therefore, when you are, you tend to be keener. And the huge enthusiasm that I encountered on that trip to Chennai sends you back energized, excited, inspired.
Yeah.
So and there was no. I didn't have time to be tired, but you weren't tired anyway, because it was the enthusiasm of the brethren there just buoys you up.
Yeah.
Terrific. You come back with a spring in your step.
Oh, it's palpable, Sir David. I think we're picking that up. Getting back to what James mentioned you a little bit earlier on, going back a few stages to history, because obviously that's very important to us, and especially in Freemasonry. James Lawton says, is the spread of English Masonry simply largely down to the history of British colonial rule all those years ago, or are there perhaps other reasons for the spread of Masonry around the globe?
A big part of it will be the spread of empire.
Yes.
But it's not limited to that. Where you can tell, Valparaiso, never been anywhere near a British colony. And there are other instances around the world where English Masonry has gone, which have not been part of the empire.
Yes.
Most of our districts, in truth, are in places which have been part of the empire, but not all, which says to me that it isn't, if you like, ideologically or intellectually, it isn't a colonial thing. It isn't something that went there because of empire or as part of empire. What are we going to do as an imperial power? You might imagine somebody saying, as part of the empire, we're going to send military, we're going to send legal, we're going to send judges, we're going to send civil servants, and we're also going to send masons. There is no trace of that.
Right.
It was not. It was. There's nothing central about, nothing governmental about it. There was no policy direction from outside masonry that masonry will go. It's something that English masons originally took with them, and which, whether or not there were English masons there, people in these countries picked up. You could say originally it was part of British values. It isn't. That's the wrong way to put it. They're universal values which came with British people, but were picked up in countries where there were British people, but the relationship was trading or academic or research of some study of some kind. It's not an adjunct to a British imperial machine.
Thank you for explaining that. Understood, James. Thank you for submitting your question. We got there in the end. Now, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on, Sir David, was to discuss those places that you've visited, and you've been privileged. Well, you've had the privilege of visiting lots of places, especially this year as well. Let's talk about your visit to Asia in a bit more detail. So that was May and June.
Yep.
Fiji. What was that like specifically in Fiji for you?
Warm. I should be wearing my Bula Fijian shirt that I was given. It was good. There was. I went to Fiji because Arula was asked to go to two events: one to install a new district grand master in New Zealand, South Island, and to attend the Asia Oceanic Conference in Singapore. They were a week apart. So I thought, let's try and build something around those two events. In between the two, I went to see our brethren in Hong Kong, District Grand Master Michael Linton-Smith into Hong Kong, discussed their challenges in Hong Kong. We can all imagine, because we read in our papers about the challenges in Hong Kong. Well, what are the particular challenges facing English masons in Hong Kong? So that was that. On the way to New Zealand, I went west, Heathrow, Los Angeles, Fiji, and there I was honoured to see Ross MacDonald, who's the Grand Inspector. If you've only got, I think there are two lodges in it's called Southwest Pacific, Fiji, two lodges in Fiji and one on a neighbouring island of Vanuatu, and he has been Grand Inspector for more than 20 years and was coming to the end of his time. So I went to see him and to see the brethren. And what they've done on Fiji in recent years is build a new Masonic temple. And I went to see that last month in November. They finally dedicated it. I couldn't be there for that, but I did as best I could, and I saw the new temple. Attended a meeting of the lodge of Latoka, which meets there, and they have an interesting form of dress. They meet in black tie. That's black tie trousers, white dress shirt, black tie. But David, don't bring a jacket. It's too hot. And I thought, I can't do that. I have to wear a jacket with my black tie. But no, they did the meeting and the festive board in that. And there I saw, for example, what they're doing by way of community engagement, where they're trying to help a new home for children with no homeless children. And I visited the building, which is in construction. And just a few weeks before, they'd had a problem with the builder. So one of the brethren, who is in the construction, just sent his team in to get over the difficulty over a weekend. Just a good example of communication. And of course, I brought that back to London because that's a learning point from.
Example, isn't it?
Yeah,
and you also visited. I mean, this was a big trip. This was a big visit. New Zealand. What was that like? I mean, you literally couldn't be any further away from English Freemasonry. What was that like for you? That particular trip?
Quite right. I went to Christchurch, which is on the South Island. I went via Auckland, and in the airport at Auckland, I had a short meeting with several brethren from New Zealand North Island. Christchurch, which of course is a former city rebuilt after an earthquake. Very nice Masonic hall, new building. Then I installed new District Grand Master John Hooper. But again, from the region, the District Grand Masters and Grand Superintendents, they all came, and we had a business meeting, smaller scale than in Singapore a bit later on, because they all came to Singapore too. But it was great to see the relationships between English Masonry in New Zealand, Scottish, Irish, bit of French, and also the Grand Lodge of New Zealand itself.
Wonderful. And this leads me nicely onto a question from Tim Tudge. Tim, Merry Christmas. Thank you for stopping by. He says, I see on the globe map, we were talking about that a little bit earlier on, and he says, I see on the globe map that Australia has 4 lodges in total compared with 37 in New Zealand. Is there a reason for that?
The reason is that what we show on the map is where English Freemasonry is. In each of the states of Australia, there is a separate sovereign Grand Lodge. So we have 1 or 2 lodges in Queensland. There is a Grand Lodge of Queensland. And the way history has gone, in Australia, the big strength in Masonry is in the sovereign Grand Lodges in each of the states, i.e. what you might call Australian Masonry, but there are 4 lodges which have opted to stay with us. The balance in New Zealand is the other way, or it's different. That English and Scottish and Irish Masonry are much bigger in percentage proportion terms than they are in New Zealand. The Grand Lodge of New Zealand is strong too, but there are just the proportions are different.
Right.
Why should that be so? It's just the way things have gone.
Yeah.
Could reflect what the country in question thinks of its relationship with England, but it won't be as small p political as that. It's just the way it's gone.
Tim, thank you for your question. That is a brilliant question, following on nicely from what we're talking about. So you visited Hong Kong as well during this the same trip, but you went to Singapore. We've touched on this a few times now. This was a really important meeting. In fact, we discussed this on a previous Solomon Live as well. This was the Asia Oceanic Conference. This is kind of everything we're talking about summed up in one meeting in a way, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And what we are seeing is, just as in England, if you go back 20, 30 years, the provinces were fairly sovereign, and the relationship between the provinces and Grand Lodge was rather more distant than it now is. But just as in England, the provinces in the same part of the country are now grouped together in what we call regional communication groups, RCGs, and there are 9 of those in England and Wales, plus London, the metropolitan area in London. So although it isn't officially structured to the same extent this way, the districts of English Masonry around the world are moving towards cooperating, working, discussing together. Trinidad, all the district grand masters, 6, 7 of them in the Caribbean, including Guyana and South America, or in that part of the world, all get together, and they do quite frequently. In Singapore, the 2 districts in New Zealand were there. Hong Kong was there. All the regions all the districts of India, and there were several districts in India, were all there for that conference. Same in Africa. In Namibia, we have a number of districts in southern Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, several in South Africa, the Republic of South Africa itself, and the leaders of almost all of them came to Namibia, yes, to witness the installation of the new GM, but also to have the business meeting, to have a discussion with a ruler from London, mutual exchange of ideas and mutual support. So the way English Masonry is going is the districts in a region are now starting to do more together, and that's going to lead to a more coordinated relationship between the districts and Grand Lodge, which, with the benefit of modern communications, is hugely to the good of Masonry wherever it is.
And of course, our topic around the world of English Freemasonry, the world had to deal with COVID-19, which has prompted Hemant Vyas, forgive me if my pronunciation isn't right. He says, what effect has the recent COVID-19 pandemic and lockdowns had on the districts around the globe, and what reactive steps have you seen to counteract that?
During COVID itself, we, that is the rulers, did a lot of Zoom calls with our brethren in English Freemasonry throughout the world. The then Programme Master, Peter Lowndes, divided up the districts amongst the rulers, and we hosted Zoom calls with particular parts of the world. The reason for doing that is time zone. No point in trying to find a time that will work in Singapore and Buenos Aires. You've got to do it geographically. And we did that, and we did several Zoom calls during the COVID period. And because the lodges in most countries, most countries in that country had lockdown of some kind or another. And I think the lodges in districts around the world found those calls helpful because it gave a reason for getting brethren together. And there were quite a number of instances where I could tell brethren were a bit, because we didn't confine it to the senior figures in the district, didn't confine it. We opened these calls up to any brother in the region in question. And I could tell that in quite a number of cases, brethren appeared on these calls who had not actually physically been to a meeting for some time. So that was during the COVID period. We took active steps to keep communication going between London and the districts, but also as an aid to communication within the districts. Following COVID, the same issues have been noticed in the district as here. Older brethren being less forward in coming back, some losses, but neither of those are to do with Masonry. I mean, they visit themselves in Masonry, but people who've been reluctant to come aren't doing it because they don't like Masonry. It's for other reasons. So we've continued visits, finding reasons to go and visit, because you don't want to just visit. There has to be some purpose to the visit, and I've given examples on this on this call. So keeping communications going, using visits as a proactive tool, and making sure that we were sharing with the districts ideas and expertise that we develop in London for getting things going, keeping things going. The members' pathway, for example, is being shared throughout English Masonry, and there are other examples as well. And I'm beginning, it'll only get going next year, a review of the third pillar of the strategy, which is community engagement. Some outstanding examples of what the districts are doing, and they will very much be included in that, on a par with the the English and Welsh provinces.
And that's
Of course, it's what they are on a path.
Yeah, but very important. And one thing from that last question is the fact that we've got so much in common, including having to deal with the wretched pandemic as well, and the after effects of that. So, David, we've only got time for a few more questions. I knew this would go in the blink of an eye. It always does whenever you and I have a conversation. So, quarterly communication next week. I'm very much looking forward to that. Will you have time to rub shoulders and have a conversation with many of your friends around the world, many of our district grandmasters?
Yes. Quite a number come to each of the 4 quarterly communications each year and the annual investiture. And I always try and make sure I talk to every one of those who are in town for that occasion, because it's very important that brethren in, whether leaders or brethren in our districts, feel that they're part of English Masonry, because you mustn't forget that in any part of England you don't have to travel far. England is a small country, lots of Masons. You don't travel far to meet another one, or to go to a meeting. Some of the countries in which our districts are sparsely populated, and it's hundreds of miles between Masonic meeting places. And sometimes I think, well, in a couple of the districts in South Africa, for example, between Masonic centres, it is literally hundreds of miles. And brethren will drive 5 or 6 hours one way, do the meeting, and then drive back through the night. Now that shows keenness, and what we must do is support and recognise that. And one way is to make sure that whenever they come to London, or in the case of the last QC, Newport, Wales, brethren from our districts are made to feel very welcome. And I would encourage English brethren to make an effort at QC and on other occasions when there are brethren from the districts present, just to go up to them and say, hello, welcome. Tell me about your country. Tell me about your district. Tell me about your lodge and chapter. How is it for you?
Oh, what a lovely way to finish our conversation. Before we do actually finally call it an evening, Sir David, you've just touched on this, working very hard in your capacity as Deputy Grand Master with the third pillar, community service. What can you tell us briefly about that? And also, can we get you on again to talk about this?
We are at the planning stage. There are 4 phases to the review. Number 1, we're in now until the end of January, February time, is fact-finding, collecting together what we think is going on, being done around the world, districts as well as provinces, whether at provincial level, national level, the MCF, Masonic Charitable Foundation, lodge and chapter level. So we've got a picture. Then in stage 2, we're going to go out to consultation to provinces, districts, lodge brethren, find ways of getting input from brethren, because we recognise that the great majority of charity and community contribution by Masons isn't actually done, it can't be, by the leaders. It's done by ordinary, no such thing as an ordinary Mason, but you know what I mean, ordinary Masons living out Masonic principles in the community. We want to make sure that they are consulted, they're given a voice, and we will do that during the course of the spring. Then we'll think about things during the summer, and then in the autumn, culminating in QC in December 24, come out with some recommendations, which will be a view of, if you like, the vision thing. What's community engagement for in relation to our Masonic lives? Is it just an add-on? So there's Masonry over here and there's community service over there, or is it one integral whole? How, through community engagement, because that's the external facing thing, how do we want to be seen outside the but by the public who are not Masons? There will be recommendations as to how to go forward. There will be tools for helping lodges and chapters and provinces evaluate. We do something in the community. Does it turn out to be a disappointment? Was it better or worse than we expected? Was it value for time, effort, money? And the other side of that tool is to enable us to assess. Somebody comes up with a good idea, let's do this. Well, let's have a look using this tool that we'll produce as to whether it's going to achieve the impact, the result, the outcome that we want, and how externally will it be seen.
So,
but I'll be delighted, spring of next year, if invited to come along and talk about it.
Yeah, brilliant. We'll get our diaries together, sir, and make sure that you come back on, because there's plenty of us to get our teeth into. So, David Wootton, our Deputy Grand Master, have you once again enjoyed your Solomon Live experience?
I have. It's been great. Thank you very much, Brody.
It's been lovely to talk to you once again. Sir, please come back and join us. And ladies and gentlemen and brethren, one more for your diary. And our next Solomon Live will be in the new year, Tuesday, the 9th of January, where our topic will be how to get the most out of our personalised learning experience, which of course is Solomon itself. We'll be joined by the lead editor of Solomon, Paul Harper, and two provincial Grand Learning and Development Officers, Nick Brown from Lincolnshire and also Mike Milner from Berkshire. One not to be missed. Maybe you're experienced in the world of Solomon, maybe you're new to that platform. Make sure you join us. Tuesday, the 9th of January, 2024. We are live UK time at 7:30. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure beforehand that you register for Solomon, solomon.ujle.org.uk. Until then, thank you for joining us this evening. And from me and all the team here at Solomon Live, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and healthy New Year. Good night, everybody.